Welcome back to another YouTube Tuesday. My name is Derek, and today we're going to be going over a channel that one of you recommended. User at JohnCarr3458 recommended that we check out a channel called iDoctor. So that's what we're going to do. Let's get into the video. Now, the iDoctor UK has amassed over 160,000 subscribers. It's uploaded over 300 videos, and I haven't checked out this video yet, so we're going to be watching it together for the first time. And I'm going to give you my thoughts and feelings, whether it's good critiques or bad critiques, about the process. We're going to be taking a look at an iPad that isn't charging, or see how he fixes it, and I'm going to see if I approve. And I want to hear your thoughts too, so let's get into the video.
This iPad 8th Gen, model A2270, was sent to me because it isn't charging properly. This is a super common issue and is endemic across all regular iPad models since the iPad 5. In this video, I'm going to show you how to repair iPad charging issues without replacing the charging port. This one we can see here has 98% charge on it already, which means it must be charging to some degree. But when I plug it in, it's very intermittent, and the user described having to have it propped in a certain way just to get it to charge.
So one of the big issues that I see with iPads is the screws coming loose on the charge port, and that can cause damage to the pins. So what I'm guessing is going to happen in this video is he's going to show that the screws are loose. There's typically 4 screws that come loose, 2 that come down vertically into the charge port, kind of retaining bracket, and then 2 that come in horizontally into that bracket, into the frame. There's 2 more that are kind of on the side that I tend to tighten up as well. They're for the speaker, but there's 4 main ones for the charge port. You tighten those up and you'll get rid of the wiggle, at least most of the time. And that wiggle causes the pins to actually, the solder to crack on the pins. So he's saying he's not really going to replace it, but he's going to fix it, so I'm assuming he's going to go that route. So far, he's diagnosing this properly.
With iPhones that are stored in people's pockets or bags, it's common to get dust and gunk in the port, and it's usually resolved by cleaning it. But I'm yet to see an iPad with the same issues. Instead, the problem lies inside the device, so we have to open it up first to take a look. To open iPad screens without breaking them, I use this big heat plate, a suction cup, and isopropyl alcohol.
Okay, so right away, he's got the iPad on its back. This is fine. You have to wait for the heat to transfer all the way through the frame and up into the adhesive. And that heat will permeate through the entire iPad. And if you don't have the heat at basically if you have the heat at too high of a temperature, you'll get something called backlight warpage. I'll put a picture of it on the screen here. And so I don't recommend doing this because if you're going to put it on the heat plate on the back, you're going to be tempted to leave it on there a long time, and you can cause issues with the backlight. Anything above 80 degrees Celsius for over like 5 minutes, you're really going to start to see warpage. So I would recommend having it face down. That way the heat transfers straight through the glass to the adhesive and not all the way through the metal frame to the adhesive. And he also said something about isopropyl alcohol. Now let's see what he means by that.
Since a buddy of mine showed me this technique, I've never looked back. I'll cover this fully in another video, but basically just cook the iPad for 10 minutes at 70 degrees on the hot plate. Then, with the iPad still on the hot plate and lifting upwards with the suction cup, work around the screen, lifting it and dropping alcohol underneath.
Okay, so he said 70 degrees Celsius. That's a good temperature. It's not too hot. You're probably not going to warp the backlight. 10 minutes, that's quite a long time. The iPad's going to be all nice and warm at that point. Anything over 10 minutes, you're running the risk of having backlight warpage. Now, he is using isopropyl alcohol, and this is something that if you're going to do is going to require quite a bit of finesse, because if you use a little too much alcohol, you're going to get issues with the backlight as well. You're going to get damage in the backlight. I'll put a picture here again what that would look like if you used a little too much isopropyl. If this is something you're comfortable doing, you can get away with it. It's not my preferred technique, but it works. You just have to be very careful with the amount of isopropyl alcohol that you use. You don't want it running in to the iPad because it could potentially get into the backlight. All right, let's keep going.
Still on the hot plate and lifting upwards with the suction cup, work around the screen, lifting it and dropping alcohol underneath. This technique works for every model of iPad, including bonded screens like those on the Pro and Air versions, and once you try this method, you'll quit any other ways that you've used before. Anyway, once the iPad's opened up, remove the 4 screws in each corner of the LCD. The top 2 screws are hidden under some black tape. Just use tweezers to peel the tape back, then unscrew. Lift out the LCD from the top, being aware of the flex cable in the bottom right of the display. And now we're into the guts of the device. Unscrew the single screw securing the battery connector and add a couple of drops of isopropyl alcohol either side of the connector. Then take an opening pick and slide it under the logic board and isolates power to the device.
Okay, so given that it's on a heat plate on the back, lifting the board like that is going to be a lot easier. Adding the isopropyl alcohol, having the heat on the frame will actually cause it so that you can split the board from the battery a little bit easier. It'll let go a lot easier than trying to brute force it with isopropyl alcohol in a cold frame. So having it on its back, I agree with in this scenario. He hasn't done anything that I really have more than just an opinion on. Overall, he hasn't broken anything, so that's good. And if this is the way he does it all the time, then he's obviously perfected it. And so, yeah, more power to him.
Remove the 3 screws holding down the LCD and digitizer connectors, then take the shield away. Disconnect the LCD first, then lift it away from the iPad and store it safely. Now disconnect the 2 digitizer flexes, then moving on to the home button flex, lift the little lever on the ZIF connector and carefully pull the flex away. Lift up the rubber spacing block and peel away the flex from the chassis to fully release it. Now remove the digitizer away from the iPad. Looking at this charging port, I can see straight away that all the screws in the area are loose. So first take a Phillips screwdriver and tighten them up really good. Now I'll take a closer look at this under the microscope.
Whoa. You see that? The 2 screws that go in horizontally, those ones are always loose if the top 2 are. So maybe he tightened them, but he definitely didn't show it. But it looks like he's doing exactly what I thought he was going to do. He's carefully scraping away the underfill or overfill, as he calls it. That'll reveal the solder joints. And I bet you what he's going to do is add some solder to it. I do this all the time. If you ever have an iPad that is charging at a specific angle, even an iPhone that's charging at a specific angle, almost every single time, unless you can physically see the pins are bent or it's lint in the iPhone port, for example. But if you can hold it at the right angle and it's clean and the pins are fine, this is probably the reason, and this type of repair will fix it on the iPads and on the iPhones, etc. So let's see how he goes about doing it and see if I agree or not.
And using this little BGA scraping tool, remove the overfill from the back of the port. You can see here that there's the absolute minimum amount of solder that's been put on these, and this is the real reason why these charging ports fail so often. Basically, every time the cable is inserted and removed, it puts pressure on these solder joints, causing microfractures and intermittent charging issues, just like the issues with this iPad. To fix it, we're just going to totally cover each pad with some very good solder and reinforce those joints. Just add some flux to help the solder flow, then add a blob of solder to each individual pin on the back of the lightning connector.
Alright, he didn't say anything, but it looks like he's cleaned off the flux. I like the amount of solder that he has on there. There is no bridging from what I can see here. So this is going to be solid. This is going to fix the charging issue. I still like to see if he tightened down those 2 screws, but I guess I'll never know unless he shows it. The next thing that I would do is cover those pins with some type of protective layer, either using some glue or some UV curable solder mask or something to help reinforce it, kind of keep them from wanting to break in the future. Let's see what he's going to do.
With the solder applied, I now take some of this UV curing resin and generously overfill the area, then cure it with a UV lamp. This will further reinforce the area and leave a really tidy job. All that remains to do now is to test the charging function, so go ahead and loosely reassemble the iPad. Don't worry about the screws or adhesive just yet, this is just for testing. Connect the LCD, digitizer and home button, fold the iPad back together, then connect your lightning cable. At this point, I can feel that this is no longer loose and there's very little movement even when I wiggle it. The Apple logo coming on means that it's recognized the cable being plugged in and has prompted the device to boot. Now, even when I wiggle the cable around, it isn't coming off charge, and when I plug the cable into the ammeter, it it jumps straight up to the 2.1 amp draw that I would expect. I hope this video has been useful for you and helped you resolve your iPad charging issues. Thank you for watching and see you next time.
I think he did a good job. And I can definitely see why he's amassed over 160,000 subscribers. He's very thorough with the way he explained how he did his process, made it simple, made it easy, made it quick. I may not have agreed with everything that he did, but I also can't fault it too much. You just have to be very careful kind of in those steps that I was concerned about. But overall, I didn't see any backlight warpage or water damage in the backlights, which means he was able to keep the temperature high enough yet low enough to not do any damage, and he didn't flood it with isopropyl alcohol, potentially causing issues with the backlight. So I agree with the way that he did this repair. Let me know in the comments below what you think. And if there's somebody that you'd like to see featured in another video, leave it in the comments below. Thanks a ton for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow for a Micro Soldering Wednesday.